Tessa, I gave everything to your brother. For a split second, I wondered if I had misheard him. The words felt so out of place, like they belonged in someone else's nightmare, not mine. I gripped my phone tighter, the sharp sting of betrayal cutting deep. My father's voice was unsettlingly calm, too calm, as if he weren't unraveling everything I had worked for in a single breath, as if the last 2 decades meant nothing. I swallowed hard, trying to force down the lump in my throat. The view outside my office window blurred as my mind raced, trying to process what this meant. The empire we had built together, the one I had sacrificed everything for, was no longer mine. For years, I had believed I was the backbone of Mitchell Enterprises, that my father saw me as his equal, the one who would continue our legacy. I had been wrong. Thanks for telling me, I replied, my voice oddly steady. I could hear my father hesitate. He had expected a different reaction, maybe a shout, a plea, or even a confrontation, but I gave him nothing. Tessa, I know this feels unfair. I hung up. The silence in my office was deafening. The weight of the moment pressed on me, heavier than anything I'd ever known. Then, something inside me shifted. I took a deep, deliberate breath, steadying the fire building in me. He thinks this is over. He's wrong. Mitchell Enterprises wasn't just a business. It was my father's dream, and my whole life. I had been there from the start, working alongside him to build it from nothing. I officially joined the company at 19, while my father had the vision. I made it tangible. I shaped our investment strategies, grew our portfolio, and rescued us from financial disaster more times than I could count. But in the past year, things had changed. My father began excluding me from key meetings. The financial reports stopped coming to my desk. Decisions were being made by my brother, Liam, the golden child, the son my father had always wanted. While I spent my 20s in boardrooms and investor meetings, Liam wasted his time in nightclubs and resorts, burning through trust fund money like it was endless. He never cared about the company, never earned his place, but somehow, my father chose him over me. I should have seen it coming. The missing reports, the hushed conversations with his lawyers, the sudden interest Liam took in the company after years of neglect. I had been too focused on running the business to notice the ground shifting beneath me, and now, they thought they had won. I stared at my mahogany desk, my fingers tapping a steady rhythm on its smooth surface. My mind was already working, sifting through years of contracts, legal frameworks, and contingency plans. What my father didn't realize, what Liam didn't realize, was that I had never been blind in this game. I reached for the black notebook hidden in my desk drawer. Inside were the real records, the ones I kept separate from the official books. Every major decision, every concealed liability, every backroom deal my father had made. It was all here. If he thought he could push me out and walk away unscathed, he was gravely mistaken. I had poured my heart, soul, and sweat into this company. I knew every weakness, every pressure point, and I wasn't going to let them win. I leaned back in my chair and gazed out at the city skyline. This was where my father had made his fatal mistake, assuming I would break. No, I wasn't mourning the loss. I was preparing for battle. With one last look at my phone, I stood up, adjusting my blazer. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. I left the office early, not because I was overwhelmed, not because I needed time to process. I left because I needed space to think. The truth was, I had already seen this coming. I drove in silence, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The streets of Austin blurred past me, a city I had helped shape, a city that now felt colder, unfamiliar. My father had cut me out. Liam had triumphed, or so they believed. I pulled into the driveway, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment, letting the quiet envelop me. The house felt hollow, because it was. I had never taken the time to build a life outside of the company. While my friends were marrying, having kids, and traveling, I had worked endless hours, making sure Mitchell Enterprises didn't crumble under the weight of my father's outdated strategies. And now, I had nothing to show for it, or so they thought. I stepped inside, throwing my keys on the counter, and headed straight for the study. The shelves, once filled with books on business strategy and negotiations, everything I had spent my life mastering, now seemed irrelevant. Instead, I reached for the one thing that had never failed me, my notebook. I opened it, skimming through pages of notes, deals my father had made, hidden accounts, things he thought I wouldn't notice. I knew my father's weaknesses well, and if he'd taught me anything, it was that power didn't rest with the one who had the largest empire. It rested with the one who knew how to destroy it. My thoughts drifted back to my childhood, to the way my father always preached loyalty and family. He raised me on tales of perseverance, grit, and earning one's place in the world, but when it came down to it, he handed everything to Liam, the one who had done nothing to earn it. This wasn't just about money, this was about respect, and my father had made one fatal mistake, he had underestimated me. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the name I needed, Ethan Carter, my father's oldest friend. Ethan had been there from the very beginning, helping my father secure the first funding for Mitchell Enterprises when it was still just an idea written on a napkin. Ethan was one of the few people who had always believed in me more than my father had. I dialed his number. Tessa. He picked up almost instantly, his voice warm but cautious. It's been a while. I need to meet, I said, cutting straight to the chase. It's about my father. There was a brief pause before he sighed. I figured something was going on. Meet me at the club in an hour. I hung up and grabbed my keys. If my father wanted to rewrite the rules, then so would I. The private club was just as I remembered it, filled with old money businessmen who had built their fortunes the same way my father had. Ethan sat in the back, sipping whiskey, watching me with that familiar, calculating expression. So, he said, swirling his drink, tell me what happened. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told him everything, the call, the betrayal, the way my father had handed everything to Liam, a man who didn't deserve it. Ethan listened intently, nodding every so often, but his expression remained unchanged. And what do you want from me? He finally asked. I leaned in, locking eyes with him. I want to build something better, and I want to make sure my father and Liam understand exactly what they lost. Ethan studied me for a moment, then let out a soft chuckle. Your father always said you had my ruthlessness. Then you know I won't lose. He nodded slowly. All right, Tessa, tell me your plan. I exhaled, feeling the fire inside me intensify. My father had taken everything from me. Now it was my turn to take everything from him. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying me with that sharp gaze I'd seen him use to evaluate business deals for years. His silence wasn't uncertainty, it was calculation. I had seen this look before, back when he and my father were still partners. You know, he said, swirling the ice in his glass, your father would call this a betrayal. I chuckled dryly. That's rich. I thought betrayal was cutting your own daughter out of the company she built. Ethan smirked. Touché. I folded my hands on the table, keeping my expression neutral. I don't just want revenge, Ethan. I want to build something better, something that will make Mitchell Enterprises seem insignificant. He nodded thoughtfully, setting his drink down. All right, let's talk strategy. If there was one thing I had learned in business, it was that power didn't come from owning something, it came from controlling it, and despite what my father thought, I still controlled far more than he realized. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my notes. Mitchell Enterprises has a major vulnerability right now, expansion. The company is overleveraged. My father and Liam have been pouring money into acquisitions, hoping to grow faster than the market will allow, but they lack the infrastructure to support it. Ethan raised an eyebrow. How do you know that? Because I built the infrastructure. I met his gaze. I know exactly where the cracks are, and if those cracks widen even a little, the whole thing will crumble. Ethan chuckled lowly. So you don't want to confront them directly, you want to let them destroy themselves. Exactly. For the past year, Mitchell Enterprises had been aggressively investing in real estate, manufacturing, and logistics, but my father and Liam weren't true visionaries. They didn't understand the industries they were entering. They were driven by blind ambition and arrogance, thinking their name alone could guarantee success. It couldn't. And when Mitchell Enterprises starts struggling? Ethan asked, a knowing smile tugging at his lips. That's when I make my move. Revenge wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to prove I wasn't just a disposable tool my father could cast aside. I wanted to show them that cutting me out was the biggest mistake they could ever make. I needed resources, funding, and most of all, I needed the right people by my side. I'm starting my own firm, I declared. It'll be lean, strategic, and focused on acquisitions that make sense, not just flashy headlines. And I want to bring the best talent from Mitchell Enterprises with me. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. You really are your father's daughter. I smirked, but there was no warmth in it. No, I'm better. Years of hard work at Mitchell Enterprises had allowed me to build the strongest teams, to train the sharpest minds. They trusted me, not Liam. If given the chance, I knew exactly where their loyalty would lie. Ethan leaned in, intrigued. Let me guess, you already have names? I slid my phone across the table, showing him a list of top executives, project managers, And financial analysts, the people who made Mitchell Enterprises run. These are the ones who keep the company going, I said, and I can guarantee you, half of them would jump ship if the right offer came along. Ethan whistled low. You don't waste any time, do you? I don't have time to waste. Ethan leaned back, thinking through the options. All right, Tessa, I'm in. That was all I needed to hear. Within a week, I secured the initial funding. Ethan introduced me to investors eager to back a competitor to Mitchell Enterprises, especially one that knew exactly how to bring it down from the inside. The first person I called was Danielle Carter, the head of risk management at Mitchell Enterprises. She had been my mentor for years, someone who had seen the work I'd put in. Tessa, she answered on the first ring. I heard about what happened. I'm starting something new, I interrupted, and I want you to join me. There was a brief pause, then she said, where do I sign? One by one, things started falling into place. By the end of the week, I had 4 key players on board. By the end of the month, I had 10, and the best part? My father hadn't seen it coming. They thought I'd fade away. They were wrong. I sat in my new office, staring at the incorporation papers for my firm. Mitchell Enterprises had taken everything from me, but I had built something better. I picked up my phone and scrolled to my father's contact. For a moment, I considered calling him to tell him what I was about to do, but then I smiled to myself and set the phone down. He would find out soon enough. The first domino had fallen. In the weeks that followed, the momentum grew into something unstoppable. More people left Mitchell Enterprises, some quietly, others with dramatic exits, but all with the same goal, to work with me. I didn't need to poach aggressively. I knew who felt undervalued, who was frustrated by Liam's incompetence, and who was ready to jump ship before the company imploded, and the collapse was inevitable. I had watched my father run the company for years, always thinking loyalty and legacy mattered more than innovation and strategy. That mindset worked when I was there to balance him, but with Liam in charge, it was a ticking time bomb. The first real blow to Mitchell Enterprises came when Liam botched an acquisition deal. 4 months, they had been negotiating to acquire Harlan Tech, a logistics company that would have strengthened their supply chain operations. It was a major move, one I had originally led before my father cut me out, but now Liam had taken the reins and messed up beyond repair. The news broke first. Mitchell Enterprises fumbles key acquisition as CEO's son mismanages deal. Harlan Tech walks away. Cites leadership concerns at Mitchell Enterprises. I read the headlines with quiet satisfaction. Liam had overpromised, miscalculated, and pushed Harlan Tech into the arms of a rival firm, a firm that I had personally advised on the deal, a firm now aligned with me. It wasn't enough to destroy Mitchell Enterprises yet, but it was the first crack in their foundation, and I knew my father was watching it unfold. 2 days later, as I was reviewing my firm's latest expansion plans, I got the call I knew was coming. My phone buzzed. Dad. I let it ring, letting it hover just before voicemail. Then I picked up. Tessa. His voice was tight, controlled, but the tension underneath was clear. I assume you've seen the news? I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. I took a moment, letting the silence hang. Did you have something to do with this? He asked, his voice tense. I exhaled slowly, letting the quiet stretch between us. Dad, I finally responded. You made it perfectly clear I was out. Why would I have anything to do with Mitchell Enterprises? He sighed deeply, the weight of the situation bearing down on him. We need to talk. The regret was palpable, but I wasn't ready to engage, not yet. I'm busy, I replied smoothly. We'll have to do this another time. Before he could respond, I ended the call, and for the first time in my life, I walked away from him. It wasn't just me enjoying the unfolding chaos. I received a text from Danielle Carter, my former mentor and now one of my closest allies. Danielle, Liam's losing it. He called an emergency meeting today, blamed internal sabotage. People are starting to question if he knows what he's doing. I smirked to myself. Of course, Liam was cracking under pressure. He'd never been good with stress. Now, with the media circling, investors growing anxious, and key employees jumping ship, he was sinking fast. But this was only the beginning. I wasn't just after Liam, I was after my father's legacy. Mitchell Enterprises wasn't just a company, it was an institution, built on decades of reputation, on my father's ability to sell the idea that Mitchells never fail. But now, it was failing, and all I had to do was let their own mistakes pull them down. I made my next move. I called Ethan. It's time, I told him. Are you sure? He asked. concern lacing his voice. Liam's cracking. My father's losing faith in him. Investors are getting nervous. If we act now, we can snatch some of their biggest contracts before they even realize it. Ethan chuckled softly. You really are ruthless, Tessa. I smiled, but it wasn't a friendly one. I learned from the best. The trap was set. Now, all I had to do was wait. The next phase was simple: weaken Mitchell Enterprises even more, secure key contracts before they could, and wait for my father to realize the enormity of his mistake. For years, I had played the part of the perfect daughter, the loyal heir, the quiet strategist behind the scenes, but not anymore. Now, I was ready to watch them burn. Liam was drowning. I observed from a distance as Mitchell Enterprises, once a powerhouse, once my legacy, began to collapse under the weight of his incompetence. It started slow, a missed deadline here, a bad quarter there, but then, it snowballed. And I made sure to accelerate the process. After the Harlan Tech deal fell apart, Mitchell Enterprises lost more than just an acquisition, they lost their credibility. Investors weren't just concerned anymore, they were terrified. Then came the departures. First, a few executives, the ones I had poached for my new firm. Soon, key managers, the very people who had kept the company running, followed suit. Clients hesitated. Contracts that were once guaranteed were suddenly left unsigned. Investors started calling my father directly, demanding answers. And the best part? I hadn't had to lift a finger. Liam was doing all the damage on his own. The second call from my father came late one night. I was in my office, reviewing a contract for my firm's latest acquisition, one that had once been Mitchell Enterprises' crown jewel. The irony wasn't lost on me. I let the phone ring 3 times before I picked it up. Dad? His voice was different this time. Not angry, not self-assured, desperate. Tessa, listen, we need to talk in person. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the desk. What for? A pause, then a heavy sigh. Liam is struggling, the board's concerned, there are financial issues that need attention. Financial issues? I repeated, feigning surprise. That was an understatement. Mitchell Enterprises was hemorrhaging money. Each failed deal, every bad decision Liam made, was eating away at their foundation. And you think I can help? I asked, pretending to be innocent. Tessa, please, my father's voice softened, almost pleading. I know you're angry, but you're still part of this family. You've always been the smartest one. We need you. Ah, there it was. For the first time in my life, my father was acknowledging the truth I'd always known, but it was too late. We met at his office the next morning. The tension in the room was suffocating. Liam was already there, sitting stiffly by my father's desk. His face was pale, the usual cocky smirk nowhere to be found. He knew, they both knew. Tessa, my father began, his voice strained, we need to restructure the company. The losses have been significant. Define significant, I said flatly. I crossed my arms, watching him closely as the silence stretched on. Then, he pushed a folder across the desk. I opened it, and there it was, Mitchell Enterprises on the brink of bankruptcy. My father, the man who had built an empire from scratch, had let it fall apart in less than a year because he handed everything over to the wrong person. I closed the folder, meeting his gaze. What do you want from me? He hesitated before responding, his voice low and almost painful. Come back, help us fix this. I could have laughed. I could have thrown the folder in his face and walked out, but instead, I let the silence hang, savoring the shift in power. Liam, the golden child, was silent now, no arrogance, no entitlement, just fear. And if I don't? I asked, watching my father closely. He exhaled deeply. Then we lose everything. I tapped my fingers on the folder, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. They had underestimated me, discarded me, and now they were begging for my help. I'll think about it, I said, standing up. Liam's head snapped up. Wait, what? She can do whatever she wants, my father interrupted. Liam closed his mouth, and I turned to leave. I had already won, and the best part? They still had no idea what I was about to do next. I didn't go back to Mitchell Enterprises. I ignored their calls. I didn't reply to their emails. I didn't even acknowledge the increasingly desperate letters my father sent. I let them wait, let them wonder. While they scrambled to fix the mess they had created, I made my final move. 1 month later, the news broke. Mitchell Enterprises had filed for bankruptcy amid a leadership crisis. The article was scathing, detailing the failed acquisitions, mass resignations, and fractured leadership. Liam's name was splashed across every headline, the face of the company's collapse. But what interested me the most was the section about their assets. Mitchell Enterprises wasn't just collapsing, it was being sold off piece by piece, and I had been waiting for this moment. I sat in a sleek, modern conference room, watching as a team of lawyers and advisors finalized the paperwork in front of me. The room buzzed with quiet efficiency, a stark contrast to the chaos at Mitchell Enterprises. My lawyer slid the final contract across the table. "It's official," he said. "Your firm now owns Mitchell Enterprises' most valuable assets." I picked up the pen and signed my name. That was it. Just like that, I had taken everything my father built without him even realizing it was happening. Liam thought he was playing a game of power. My father thought he was preserving his legacy, but the truth was, they had been playing checkers while I was playing chess. I didn't just take the company, I took the best clients, the most profitable divisions, and the people who had built the business, and what was left, a hollow shell, a name with no value, a legacy that no longer belonged to them. I didn't expect my father to reach out again, but he did. I was in my office when my assistant knocked. "Miss Mitchell," she said cautiously, "your father is here." I looked up from my desk. I hadn't seen him in weeks. "Send him in." When he entered, I barely recognized him. He looked older, worn out, like a man who had finally realized just how much he had lost. He stood there for a moment, taking in my office, my new company, my success. "You really did it," he finally said. "I did." A long silence hung between us. "You could have helped," he said. "You could have come back, we could have fixed it together." I leaned back in my chair. "No, Dad, you could have fixed it, but you didn't want to. You wanted Liam to be the golden child. You wanted to prove that I wasn't needed." I gestured around the room. "You finally understand what I've always known. It was never about the name. It was never about the company. It was about the people who built it." His jaw clenched. He wanted to argue, to justify, to make excuses, but he couldn't, because deep down, he knew I was right. I made a mistake. For a brief moment, something inside me flickered, a part of me, the daughter who had once admired him, wanted to forgive him, but then I remembered how he had discarded me. I remembered every moment I had spent trying to prove myself, only to be told it was never enough, so I stayed silent. Finally, he nodded, an unspoken admission of defeat. Without another word, he turned and left my office. This time, I didn't look back. I never needed Mitchell Enterprises. I never needed my father's approval. What I needed was the freedom to build something of my own, and that's exactly what I did. Power isn't given, it's taken, and in the end, I took everything. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Stay stunned.